Alright guys, let's quickly show how to thread up a Consew 206rb-4 or 5. These two variants of this model are very similar and they'll thread up just the same. Okay, we'll thread the machine up quickly and then I'll do it a second time and give a more detailed explanation of each step. Start with the guidepost on top of the machine 2 times, once from back to front and once from right to left. You've got 3 holes in the tension assembly. Go through at least 2 of those in a barber pole style fashion from right to left. Raise your presser foot, take the thread between the tension discs and around this side of the thread controller. Hold your thread back from up above and raise the thread up above the spring until it clicks in over the hook. From there, through the thread guide, take up arm from right to left. Hit 3 guides on your way down from the take up arm. Needle bar thread guide, and thread the needle from left to right. Alright, let's have another look at it from the top, this time a little bit slower and with a little extra detail to understand why the exact thread path is so important on this particular machine. If there's a step that can be done 2 different ways and they're both basically correct, I'll go over that. And then there's one specific pitfall that I want you to avoid on this machine, and we'll describe that in full detail. It all starts with an industrial thread stand, and you really need to use these industrial spools of thread. They're different than domestic thread because they unspool off the top. I really recommend these thread socks, and they prevent a common problem where a loose loop of thread will come down and get hung up around the thread stand. That'll cause a thread break for you, and you don't want that in the middle of a project. So these thread socks are a simple fix to that. From there, head up through the eyelet in the thread stand and down towards the guidepost on the machine. So the guidepost is just threaded into the machine. Make sure that's twisted all the way in before you start. There's 2 holes there, and questions that come up frequently are, do I have to use both holes? And which hole do I go through first? Well, it kind of depends on where your post stops as you thread it into the machine. But I'm going to go from back to front first, and then from right to left. And that will lead my thread in the direction of the tension assembly, which is our next stop. It's not necessarily wrong if you just go through 1 hole, but realize the reason we go through 2 holes is to prevent a knot or tangle from making its way down to the machine. So the tension assembly has 3 holes here, and you can thread it one of 2 ways. You can thread it just through the top and bottom hole like we did in the quick threading guide at the start of this video, or you can do it barber pole style and thread through all 3 of these holes. Neither one is right and neither one is wrong. Just realize if you go through all 3 holes, that creates a little more passive tension and lets you back off your adjustable tension just a little bit more. Whatever way you get used to threading it, maybe just stick with that and your tension will be set accordingly. From there, make sure to raise your presser foot so that as you drop the thread between the tension discs, it will seat nice and deeply. Then come around between the discs of the thread controller. Hold your thread back from up above, raise it till it clicks. Now, how do you know whether that's in the right position? And you know by lifting the thread at that point. If it acts on the spring of the thread controller, then you're threaded right. From that point, go up through this guide. Take up arm is threaded always from right to left. And then as you head back down, realize that you're going through the same guide that you just came up. Another guide on the face of the machine on our way down, and the guide with the piece of felt in it. The needle bar thread guide is interesting. Usually what you have is a C shape where it's open on the left side and you can work the thread around it. And so that's probably the easiest way to do it if your machine is equipped that way. If not, like a lot of FAFs, they don't have an opening, they're just a through hole. And in that case you kind of have to stab the thread down through. And either way works just fine. Just make sure that you go through that needle bar thread guide. Make sure the needle is installed correctly in the machine with the long groove facing the left and the scarf of the needle facing right, and we'll thread that from left to right. And then the threading mistake that you should never make, do not go around this pin. Several videos say that you should go around this pin, and that's just absolutely not correct. They'll show you to go up around this pin like so. Don't ever do that. It's just too much tension on the upper mechanism. Simply go around the tension discs and then head down into the thread controller. The machine takes a 135/17 needle, unless you're sewing with leather, in which case you'll use a leather point needle, which is called a 135/16. If you're sewing with a standard 90 or 92 weight thread, try a size 19 or 20 needle. If you're sewing with a heavier 138 thread, use a size 22 or 23. Roughly align the dots on the wheel before you remove or install a bobbin case. Your thread should be coming off the bobbin this way as you drop it into the bobbin case. Just make sure that your thread goes through this anti-backlash slot around the tension finger into this little notch. The tension on your bobbin should be light and consistent, nowhere near as heavy as that of your upper tension. If you do need to make a little adjustment, just make quarter turn adjustments on this little screw. There's 2 screws in that area. It's the one with the little ring around it. After a quarter turn adjustment, just retest your tension. And as long as the dots on your hand wheel are still aligned, you should have no trouble popping your bobbin case back into the machine. On this machine, they say picking up the bobbin thread is optional, and it's true, you'll get away with it a lot of times, but I always like just to run something under my foot, pick up that bobbin thread like normal, and it's also a good idea to hold your threads back as you begin to sew. My other machine is a Juki LU563, and like any top loader, it's a little more prone to catching and hang-ups if you forget to hold your threads back when you start to sew. The 206 is pretty good in that regard, but I think it's a great habit to get into, just to hold your threads back with any industrial machine. Make sure to drop your presser foot down if you have that up for threading. Hold your threads back to sew. Back tack if it's a finished seam, and away you go. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next one.